Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 130. I'm speaking with Bobby Chiu from Schoolism. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Okay, welcome to episode 130. I'm really excited about this one. I'm speaking with Bobby Chiu, who is the founder of Schoolism, which is an online teaching school specifically related to art. And I think this is a really awesome episode because Bobby has so many amazing insights to share. And I think that we get into so much cool stuff. So the actual episode is broken up into two episodes because we covered so much content that I wanted to make it a bit more specific. So the first episode, which is this one, 130, is going to be focused specifically on Bobby and a lot of his insights and a lot of his story as well. And I think that we cover so much great information, everything from working remotely, talking about art as a serious career, all of the disciplines that we need to really implement into our day-to-day, the resilience that we go through, and so much more. Beyond that, the next episode will be much more laser-focused on Schoolism, and that one will be coming up pretty soon. So I'm excited about this. In the meantime, just a heads up, I'm going to be speaking in a couple weeks in Paris at the IA Mag Masterclass, and that's coming up pretty quickly. So I'm going to be giving a masterclass on branding and how to build your name as a brand. So to clarify, this isn't just about like matching your business card with your website or, color theory or whatever. No, this is more about building your name, building it out there, and how people think of you and why it's important to do this. So I think this is going to be a really great talk. I'm excited about it. And I'm also excited for all of the other speakers that are coming. I think this is going to be really cool. I'm going to be also reaching out to everyone in my mentorship in the coming days as well to let them know about a group meetup that we're going to do in Europe. So that way every one of us can get together, hang out, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm actually going to organize it before the event this time around so we have a bit more one-on-one time, because usually once the event starts, it's craziness. It's usually 6 in the morning till midnight every single day, at least for me, and it's kind of nuts. I'm looking forward to doing the opening ceremony talk. Last year I opened as well, so that was always a lot of fun. And I'm thinking this is going to be really cool. I'm also going to try and live stream some of this stuff as well, as much as I can, in fact. So if you want to check out some of the talks as well as mine, make sure you're on my Facebook, which is facebook.com, I think, Allan FT McKay. Otherwise, just Google it, but just go to my public page, not my personal, and I'll be streaming there. And I might do Instagram as well. So, just Google it is probably the easiest way later on, rather than trying to type in URLs now, things like that. But definitely check those out. Now, like I said, I want to dive right into this episode. If you have a chance, please share this one around. I think it's going to be one of those that all of us can really benefit from. So if you want to check out the show notes, simply go to allanmckay.com/130 for episode 130. And you can share everything there. So if you can do that, that would mean the world to me. And I think that it would also hopefully benefit a lot of other people as well. That being said, let's dive in. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name's Bobby Chiu. I'm an artist.
That's awesome. And obviously you have a couple of businesses that you're tied to, so Imaginism and Schoolism. Do you want to quickly give a few words about what Schoolism is?
Sure. Schoolism is a site, first and foremost, that provides online education, online education from the industry's best. And as well, it we do live workshops, different cities around the world. And we also have a live 30-day experience that you can do. Our most intense thing, which is the Schoolism Lake House. It's just outside of Montreal, Canada, where you and 3 other selected artists would apply and get accepted and stay at that house for 30 days with your mentor. So not just, learning from somebody for 30 days, but living with them like old school apprentice and master kind of style. And then we fly in a guest artist sometime during your stay to stay with you as well and to teach you and break bread with you. It's quite the experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm just kind of curious about that with the lake house. I mean, first of all, I love the idea of that, but how does that work? Like, let's say Nathan Fowkes. Nathan will kill me for saying that. Nathan Fowkes. Yeah, let's say if it was him or something like that, like they're literally like relocated to there for 30 days.
Nathan was one of the guests. The guests usually stay for a few days, not 30 days.
Because it was starting to sound like Big Brother or something, you know what I mean? It's like, you get to live in a house with all these crazy artists.
It is the best reality show with no cameras, I can tell you that. Because people are coming in from everywhere, Alan. Like South Africa, South America, Europe, Asia, everywhere. We even had a person come from Nunavut one time. You know where Nunavut is?
That's like no idea.
That's the Inuit country in the Arctic, in the Arctic region. So we even had an artist come from there, from all walks of life. And then Nathan, he came in as a former guest, stayed, I believe, about 5 days a week, something like that. So imagine you're coming from Nunavut and you barely know any other artists, and then all of a sudden you're staying in the same home as one of your favorite artists.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's amazing because at the same time, like, I do think that this industry doesn't really have that many places to really network and do it properly, because I think that all of us, when we think of networking, we think of, at least I do for some reason, someone with a cocktail in their hand, dressed in a suit, and has nothing to do with our industry. And at the same time, there are events around, but most of the time you don't really have direct access to the speakers. And just kind of be able to fully immerse yourself, which I think is the only way to really learn, is to fully immerse yourself in any environment that you're in every way you can, but like to actually have that direct access, like I think that's amazing.
You probably feel it even more because you were not born in the U.S. Just like I don't live in the U.S. right now either. So to network with the people that you really want to network with, 15 years ago, that was very difficult. Yeah. That was very, very difficult, and that is one of the driving forces behind Schoolism, is to help to connect the people out there with their favorite artists, whether through classes or I've been doing these free interviews for like the last 12 years or so. And for me, it was very much a personal thing because I wanted to meet these people too. I wanted to connect with them, but I didn't necessarily want to move. My family is in Toronto. I am a very big family person. So, this was my solution, and it just happened to be a lot of other people's solution as well.
I love that. Yeah, and I want to dive into that a little bit later on about exactly that subject, because again, like, most of my career I've worked remote. I've worked, even when I live in LA, I typically work from home just because I've got my own tools, my own process, and I like to be able to pick and choose the projects I do, pick and choose the hours I want to work, and at the same time, if I want to do lots of projects, I can do that. Whereas traditionally being limited to the 9 to 5 at work, which our industry, again, there's no such thing as 9 to 5. It's more like 10 till 10. But yeah, if you are doing that, you're only stuck on one project, one paycheck. And I think that for a lot of people, you can kind of take advantage of being able to work anywhere and live anywhere these days. You don't need to be limited to just the big cities like London, LA, and like Vancouver, obviously now, a few places like that. So, yeah.
Just a little caveat. Jaw Cooper, amazing artist. She says she tries to work as little as possible. She'll work like a week out of the month. And as long as your living expenses, you keep them nice and low, because she loves to go camping and things like that, you could totally live like royalty.
Hmm. It's so true. And yeah, I've actually got a talk I'm doing soon, talking specifically about that. But like, yeah, figuring out your TMI, your target monthly income, I think is one of those critical things because most people kind of picture, if you're going to work remotely, then life's going to be really difficult because you got to find clients and you're always going to be starving and struggling. But the fact is that once you figure out, hey, I've got to pay rent, I've got to pay food, what are the other expenses, and then from there, it's like, well, if this is typically what the cost of living is, then I need to work X amount of days per year, or sorry, per week, and then I can just go off and do my own thing. And you're right, like you can create any opportunity or any reality that you want for that lifestyle. I think these days, like there's so many tools with internet and everything else that you literally can work from anywhere.
Absolutely.
And actually, we're just talking right before this about Game of Thrones, and that's actually a project that I just moved to Portland, and my client was actually in Sydney working for HBO in LA, and I ended up doing half the project on my machine, and then the other half I was remote logging into one of their machines physically in their office and working from there as well. And like I've done so many variations of that over the years where yeah, you literally can work in any shape and form, and like yeah, it's seamless these days.
And how long has it been for you now?
20 something years. I think it was 96 I first started, but I'd say I really got like more consistent work on big projects about 98. So if I were good at math, I'd say, yeah, about
19
20 years.
years.
Yeah.
So when did you start to work remotely and people were cool with it?
Yeah. I've actually not had that much struggle with it. And I think it's just, I think a lot of people have fear around like people saying no to it, or instantly writing it off saying that's impossible. No one's going to say yes. And I will just quickly mention, like in LA, like I've had literally like Activision working on a AAA, like Call of Duty, AAA game. I lived less than half a block away, so like literally a few hundred feet, and I was still working a lot from home just because I liked my tools and I had better equipment than they did for a lot of their work. And yeah, it's just one of those things that whether they're on the other side of the world or literally the other side of the street, yeah, I've always been able to do that. And I think that early in my career, I did it very extensively because I was only 14, 15, and I was pretty careful to not really communicate how young I was, thinking or being told that quite a lot that no one's going to hire someone unless you're at least 18 years old. So I kind of used that as a workaround for being able to dive into the industry quite early on. And I do think that that's such a critical thing these days, that people might use age, race, or sex as an excuse to like why they're not getting work or why they can't do whatever they want to do. And in this day and age, like with the internet, you literally are not restricted. You can be in India, you could be in New York, you could be anywhere you want and be able to get that work. It's just about being able to kind of beat down whatever that inner critic is or whatever that's telling you that you can't do it. But to answer your question, yeah, very early on I did, and then I moved to LA for quite a few years, and then I moved back to Australia, and like all my clients were in LA, so I just continued to work for a lot of them. And I just found it's more a matter of just being upfront with people and saying, hey, this is how I work, and if you have any issues, let me know, but this is what to expect. And I think that the more you're able to remove any let's say fears that they might have about miscommunication or privacy or whatever it might be that they might be concerned about, usually it's a no-brainer. And I think it's also about how you approach it yourself. If you were to make it a big deal and say like, I hope this is okay, and constantly asking permission, then they're going to start to feel that like, yeah, okay, this isn't normal. But if you treat it like this is what I do and this is what to expect, then most people are always going to be on board with that.
Yeah, I have a great little story about that. It's interesting to hear your story there. I started pretty much around the same time, about 15 years old. I was doing graphics for BBS sites, BBS, whatever they're
Yep,
called,
like
ANSI art.
ASCII. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, or
yeah.
ASCII art or whatever you want to call it. Um, so that was really interesting. And for the youngins out there, ASCII art or ANSI art was kind of like pixel art, except the pixels were rectangular. So you couldn't really, it was way harder to shape things and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I was 15 and then I got my first like in-house job when I was 17. So you definitely feel that you are the youngest person by far, and as time goes on, you learn that really I could have totally moved up as fast and as far as I wanted to, as long as you have the right attitude and as long as you kind of just like, show the confidence in the things that you know,
Hmm.
not in the things that you don't know, but in the things that you know, right? And people will look at you and go, okay, I will, give this person a try because you're special,
Yep.
right? And you could think of it as, oh, I'm too young, or you could think of it as, I guess I'm kind of special. The other thing was working remotely. That was another interesting thing that was really great for me to experience the whole entire process of people getting used to working with you over the internet. I know that sounds trite now, but back then it was like, okay, so how's that gonna work? I can't do that. I can't work with you remotely. Uh, One of the best things that ever happened to us was also one of kind of like my biggest regrets. Not like it's a, not like I have a lot of regrets, but when I was working on Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland back in the day, I was asked to move to London to work on it, and then move to LA to finish up on it. Um, at the time, I was teaching in college. I was teaching a graduating year. And for if you kind of think back to your graduating year of university or college, it's very important, right? And it's very important for you to have stability with your education as well.
Hmm.
So I really fought my kind of moral principles and things like that. And I decided, you know what, it's not right for me to leave the students. I'm going to stay. So I asked them, can I stay in Toronto and work on the film from here? They said, okay, we could try, and it worked out fine. And then the next project was another one from LA. And remember, this is in the big, earlier on. And the person was like, okay, so you can move to LA and, work on this film. I was like, well, I could work on the film, but can I do it from Toronto? And then they were like, no, you can't do that. It won't work. And then I just said, well, it worked for Tim Burton. Can we just at least try? And then they're like, oh, okay, sure. And it was because of that one kind of like, this thing where I really wanted to move to London. Because everybody got to, well, not a small group of people, but they got to work with Tim Burton.
Yeah.
They got to work in Arthur Rackham's studio. Oh my goodness. Right? And I missed out on all that. But because of that, I was able to do everything else for years and years ever since then, from the comfort of my, my city, Toronto.
Yeah, and I think that's you're right. Like that's one of the only downsides is that there are going to be opportunities where working remotely you are missing out on some really great things, and obviously even on the more smaller scale, just being part of the team. I think it's really critical. Like I always make it a point if I can to still at least meet the team before I start, depending on what it is. If it's a 2-week job, forget it. But if it's a long form, like let's say 6 months, then typically I want to still be able to pop over there a few times throughout the project. And I think it's just critical because that way there's a face to everyone and as well to you. So that way you're not like Joe Blow who gets disregarded for every request because they don't see you as anything other than a name. So like, having that FaceTime can be really critical. But yeah, there's going to be times where, you kind of don't get to experience all the benefits of being on site. And there's always plus and minuses with anything. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, both as well as just seeing what some companies' reactions might be, because they might have had a bad experience in the past as well. And I think sometimes setting contingencies like, hey, if things, let's try it out for the first half, and then from there we can change it up. And I've done specifically that on some projects. Like I did Transformers on site, and then the final week I flew back to LA. I was doing it up in San Fran, and like they were asking like, hey, we've got this one more shot. Do you want to come back, or do you want to work remote? And I wanted to try out doing a big feature film remotely, logging in, and that worked out really well. Whereas same studio ended up working the first half, or the first 3/4 offsite for Flight, which is Denzel Washington's film, and then the final piece I ended up flying in for. And I did that intentionally myself, just because I knew that the final push would be a lot harder, and it'd be better to be immersed in a team environment. And I think there's so many different variations or permutations of how you can work, but sometimes it is a matter of planning it, where it's like, look, I'll work remote for this amount of time, and then I'll come in, and the final push, we can all be together in the same environment. And that way it's not a huge burden on your family and everyone else for you being away for extensive periods, but at the same time you can still make the most of when it really comes down to the crunch. So I think that every situation is different, but it's also sometimes a matter of anticipating where it's going to work out really well and where there might be hiccups. And let's say working on the final deadlines when you need that quick turnaround, that might be better, to do on site, or whatever you want to figure out. And, and at least that way you can kind of put that out to the employer, and they might, really love that idea and be able to then be on board because you've addressed like whatever hesitations they might have had.
I think I'm lucky because of the actual, like the jobs that I am asked to do. It's usually character design. It's usually very early previs or something like that. So it really doesn't need to, actually, I don't really need to come in.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing too, is you're right. Like earlier in the pipeline, especially more on the conceptual stage, that's kind of cool because it's usually a bit more standalone. You're typically working with the art director or, whoever your client might specifically be. But I think that's a lot cleaner because you get a lot less feedback in terms of people waiting on stuff from you, and you waiting on stuff from other people, and going more into the trenches with it all. But and I think that's a cool thing too, is just being more as a concept artist, you can kind of have that external place that you can work, and it tends to work a lot better, as well as modeling. Anything that's at the very beginning of the pipeline, if you're doing 3D modeling or stuff like that, it's again you're building assets or things that are very early into the process, which makes it a lot easier. But that's cool. And just to jump around a little bit, but we're literally in question 2 of everything I was going to go through. But I mean, do you want to just talk about Imaginism as well? I'm kind of curious myself, like how they differentiate between Schoolism and Imaginism.
Oh, well, Imaginism is kind of like the umbrella. Even though Schoolism has kind of grown into a much bigger thing, Imaginism is the studio part of our company. That's where we do the movies from. That's where we bill from. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
That's awesome. And I was just curious about your background as an artist. I mean, obviously you've been doing quite a lot of work, and I love that. By the way, I was always curious back in the day with all the ANSI art. I finally discovered how to do it, literally just as BBSs were, and all that was very quickly shifting. But I mean, I always found it kind of fascinating, especially back when computers had such limited graphics, to be able to see like these really intricate designs made out of blocks and weird ASCII characters and stuff like that. But so when you first started out, like, did you always want to be an artist? Like, were you someone who just kind of came out of the womb, was ready to rock and roll with a pencil, or did you kind of discover it late in the day?
I loved art. I would do it all the time. Did I think I was going to be an artist? No, I didn't. And that was really because, my parents, I love them to death. They were just like, art is a good thing, Bobby. Your art is a good thing as a hobby. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
become a business person, a doctor, a lawyer, something like that. So I always figured I'd be a business person. That always came a lot easier to me, and it always kind of came a lot easier than art to me, to tell you the truth. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up going to business school before art school. So even though I was doing art all the time, loved it to death, I would stay home just to do art and stuff like that. I never thought that I would become an artist until about 19 years old. And I said, I was already working as an artist, taking art jobs and things like that since I was 15. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because, yeah, you might have that kind of aha moment where it's like, wait, I already am working and doing all this. It's just, I'm not doing it full time because I'm not going all in. So I'm kind of curious about that, though. How common do you think it is that, art is not a career kind of comes up? Because I find that that's such a huge hesitation a lot of people have. Either their friends, their family, everyone sees people, if they want to go and pursue that as a career, as being such a major risk, and I think that the starving artist mentality is kind of still one that kind of echoes around it. I've just done a few podcast episodes specifically around that recently, and for you, have you found that a lot of your students have that struggle of maybe people around them kind of not really getting it, or even them themselves like wondering?
I do, but I feel like it's less and less. You think about when Jurassic Park was made. You have a baby at that time. Now that baby is like, over 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, a fan of Jurassic Park understands computer animation at least a little bit. And they understand that, yeah, that's a very viable career. So I do feel like things are getting much better. When I was in my early 20s, I felt like, for the most part, and I'm being super general here, but just through my own experiences, the Chinese community, the Chinese culture was not very acceptant of, being an artist professionally. Now, it's super general, but I do feel like that has a lot of truth in it. And nowadays, animation and everything, and amongst Chinese culture has really blown up. I'm only saying this not because I'm like super connected to China or anything, but just from seeing the statistics, seeing the analytics in schoolism in general. That's where I'm getting my information from. And yeah, absolutely, China has really turned around, I feel, and I'm sure a lot of other places. Especially in Asia in general. There's so many amazing, Asian artists coming out of the woodwork in ArtStation and stuff like that. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It is kind of interesting to see that kind of shift. You're right. Like, I don't have too much of a connection with the Chinese art industry. I've been over there for a few events that I've been presenting at, things like that, and it's always amazing to see like how talented, like how insanely talented people are. But at the same time, like, yeah, I've noticed a bit of a shift just in terms of, let's say, some of the products that I've done in the past, like getting requested like pretty excessively at the moment to kind of get translated to Mandarin. And I definitely think there's a few countries that I love the fact that we do have that shift at the moment where things aren't necessarily all done in LA, and it's become a bit more of a stomping ground for other industries in other countries that typically might have had access to, like let's say AAA Hollywood films and things like that, to get to actually work on these films. And so obviously Vancouver's now become the capital of the film industry. And at the same time, India, China, Australia, New Zealand, so many different places in Europe like are now getting to all do what typically was always limited to usually New York and LA for the most part. So, I definitely love that shift that's going on at the moment.
It is happening so quick. It is kind of scary. Like you look at the movies nowadays, how many of them, for some weird reason, oh, okay, we got to go to Hong Kong. It's like, you do? Oh, okay, let's go and see what's over there. It's so kind of apparent in so many of the movies now. You're just like, this is getting like, I'm cool with it because I could speak Mandarin as well, but I don't want to move to China necessarily. But I'm just saying so much of the work is going there at such a kind of rapid rate that it can feel kind of scary.
Yeah. I think that, LA, especially living in LA, like it's definitely had a huge impact. I think it's definitely kind of had a bit of a morale impact as well, just in terms of, I think for the places that have been kind of spoiled for the longest time, like there's definitely that bit of insecurity about like, oh shit, like, we don't have like, the world on a platter like we used to. And I think, like, again...
Sorry, Alan, one of the things I just wanted to mention, though, is that any kind of change is a huge opportunity. So it's not like, like a wave is super scary. But if you are a surfer, then you look forward to these waves, right? And I'm a person that I'm not trying to stop a trend. I'm not trying to stop the wave. I am a surfer. I am trying to learn how to surf and navigate through whatever happens to our industry.
Yeah, so I love that.
That's what other people should do too. They should reach out. They should, if they see a huge trend in India, then I would look for opportunities there because it seems like it's not going to slow down. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. And just like so many things in the world, if you're one of the first adopters, you'll have a significant imprint or advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, absolutely. I think it's the best way to look at it is just always to adapt. Like for me, like I love all the kind of globalization that's happening at the moment. And yeah, I think it's better to kind of have that mindset. It's such a positive one opposed to, the sky is falling and freaking out because at the same time, like I look at the 90s, there weren't that many job opportunities around, but there weren't that many jobs around either. And now I think that it's still like now there's 1,000-fold, 100,000-fold more work opportunities than there would have been back then. And the more things globalize, the more it's just kind of creating additional industries and more requirements for everyone, like more opportunities. So I think that's great.
Yeah, like if you want to keep doing the same job for 20, 30 years, the same job like a shoe cobbler or something, then you're going to be in big trouble. That's what I think. You can't stay on the same wave for 20, 30 years. It doesn't make any sense. Especially nowadays, things change so much faster. So, as long as we try to be adaptable, we have a very good chance to thrive, no matter where you are, what language you speak, whatever.
I think that's another really interesting thing is that I find that this industry is one that you can move around so much. And I've changed careers so many times in a sense inside of my own industry. And, I've had the freedom and had the fun to be able to do that, to explore and to do all that without needing to start again. And I think that, within this industry, let's say if you're a traditional artist and you want to get into doing more 3D sculpting with ZBrush or looking at other tools that are out there, matte painting, doing animation, whatever you wanted to do, you've got all the freedom to be able to explore all that, utilize the talent that you already have and the experience and the connections and everything else you've got and start to move around. And I think it kind of goes back to that theme of, all you need to do is really adapt, but you've got that freedom to really explore so much more than what you might need to do in traditional jobs, where if you want to switch careers, it's literally starting over from scratch. And here it's more, you got this massive playground and you can just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I agree.
To to talk a little bit about your projects, and then I'd love to kind of jump into Schoolism a lot more. But what do you think? Like, when was the first big break you got when it came to film, and when you really kind of realized you had a career, doing this sort of stuff?
Well, there's many little breaks, that kind of ended up at the big break. First, big shout out to Lauren Lanning, creator of Oddworld, and one of my good buddies. He's the one that gave me my first break to work on a Tom Hanks project that never came out. And then it was Tony Bancroft. He directed Mulan. He gave me another, break very early on to work on one of his films that never came out, and a bunch of others that never came out. But it helped to get my art around the industry, so that the industry people started to know my stuff. And then, of course, Tim Burton. I believe Jackie Barnbrook, she found me and gave my, contact or whatever, my art, to Tim Burton. And then I got hired for that. And once that movie came out, that was my 6th movie project that we worked on. First one that came out, because a lot of times when I'm working on a project, they don't really have a budget for anything except for, it's just me and the director just talking about their film and creating concepts. So when Alice in Wonderland, came out, it did, very well in the box office. It hit #1 over the weekend and ended up breaking some records as well. This is before all the Avengers stuff and Star Wars and everything, so I'm sure.
And Fast and Furious 7, don't forget.
Yes. So now I'm sure,
everything in the $1 billion
Alice in
mark.
Wonderland is far down there on the charts, but still, it must probably be in the top 20 of the highest grossing movies that have been made so far. So after that, it became just a flood of offers, awesome projects, and things like that. And this was actually when I learned a really good lesson, which is, we all struggle to get to a point where we don't have to be concerned about where the next job is coming from. We have faith that, our reputation and everything will get us those jobs. But there is a point where, hopefully there's a point where you become, quite successful and you're getting more offers than you can handle. And that was the big lesson. When you get to that point, you got to learn how to say no to, a lot of stuff, a lot of very cool stuff that you would love to work on, because you only have a certain amount of hands, a certain amount of hours. And if you start to pick up really great projects and not giving it your best, not giving them the best kind of potential out of you, then that's going to really hurt your career.
Absolutely.
So it is better to learn how to say no at a point.
I think that the best way to look at that is to look at it like a percentage meter. And it's like, well, if I got one project, I'm going to give it 100%. If I got two, am I going to give one 60% and the other 40%? If I got 3, 4, like I've worked on sometimes like 6 or 7 projects at a time, and some of that is okay, but sometimes even just 2, if you got like really demanding clients, you're spreading yourself too thin, and suddenly it's like, well, I'm literally giving everything 10%. Is this what I want to be known as, the person who gives 10%, or do I want to, and I think it's such a critical thing, because you want to make sure that the jobs that you do, you give them the love and attention they need.
Definitely.
That's cool.
Because a lot of times, their next film, who do they want to call? They want to call you back because they had a really great experience and you did well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an important thing. Yeah, and Just kind of curious about that. I mean, it's kind of funny. The first big project I ever worked on was Half-Life, and it was actually then came the bit I was working on was Team Fortress 2, which became a standalone game. It ended up taking 10 years before it came out. It came out in 2007, when I think I worked on in 97. And yeah, so I know exactly that pain of like the one big thing on your resume no one has seen, and it's been years and it's still like, when is this coming out? So with that, like, how did you manage to go around and kind of build up that reputation with a lot of all these different film projects, knowing that like what you got so far you haven't been able to show or kind of gain that momentum from?
One of the big advantages that I had, which it was also kind of like a disadvantage, which was like I really started much of my career during the beginning of working remotely through the internet. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because there's not that many people in the space, which is great, but as well, people don't understand how you could work with somebody over the internet. So I really learned how to navigate through social media, through the internet, things that people only now, sometimes I'll hear about some of these things and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that person is saying something that I've been doing for like 15 years. Mm-hmm. I think it's because of that kind of thinking, that kind of knowledge and experience that I built up over the years, that I was able to really thrive, even though I work remotely for pretty much everything.
So do you think that sometimes it's important to educate your clients in terms of, what to expect? Like, how for you have you found to overcome a lot of that?
Definitely. Sometimes, if it's a director where they don't draw, then I would show in my concepts, I would show my sketches, and then I have one that was a lot more complete, and then I would say, okay, you see these drawings here? These drawings, I want you to look at just the idea of it. And if you like the idea, this is what it'll turn into, something that looks like this, like a 3D kind of fleshed out thing. And then they go, oh, okay, I get it. So I like that, and I like that, change this, and it's almost like these little tutorials mm-hmm. that I'll send with my artwork. And it's worked out pretty well like that.
No, I think it's really critical. And my fiance, she works in vehicle wrapping, so she does a lot of vehicle designs for Lamborghinis, Ferraris, stuff like that, where they want like really exotic and crazy designs on their cars. And for me, I've always kind of been really pushing her to start kind of building out like a PDF or little mini tidbits to kind of walk people through, what to expect and when to expect things, just because I think a lot of people, especially if they're not coming from a more creative background where they don't have that experience, with seeing, work in progress work, and also just not visualizing the end result. Like, you kind of need to hold people's hands a little bit. And, otherwise, like, some people are going to freak out. Like, this is not the finished thing. Why am I not looking at the finished thing? And it's just like, well, look, it's a process, and I think that the more you can educate people in terms of how that process works, the more that they're going to be a lot more at ease and give you a lot more trust. And the difference is that you're not going to have people breathing down your neck, freaking out, and all the things that you don't want, especially when being remote, like offsite as well, is just going to add that pressure to the mix.
A little story that I found super funny was a friend of mine. She was working in a studio, and there was a pitch and everything, and it was just storyboards. It's just storyboarded drawings of the film at the time, and there was an executive that was just like, this movie is not going to be in black and white, is it? And then my friend was just like thinking to herself, like, what the hell? Yeah.
We did a commercial in Sydney, like it was the first HD TV commercial for Samsung and the new TV. This is back in like 99, and we got awarded the job as like $1 million. I think, yeah, it was 1.2 million, I think it was, for the job. It was the biggest we had gotten at the time. And the thing is, there's a studio directly across from us who are competing as well, and they lost the job. So we're doing the early previs for the project, and so obviously previs, very crude graphics, but at the same time, we decided to put everything out as black and white initially, just so that way we can focus on, you know, all the key things that we wanted to get in there, and then start introducing color and everything else later on once we got to that phase. So the client that lost the job ended up submitting their own previs in color, and it wasn't necessarily looking better than ours, it was just in color. And they ended up pulling the job from us, $1.2 million, and giving it to them because their previs was in color and ours wasn't. So that was huge lesson for me. I learned so much from that one job.
Now, a bunch of the work that I get now is strictly for presentations, because I've been in so many projects, whereas from the very, very beginning, that you know, now people come to me to help them in the very, very beginning part of their film, especially because I know how to make something very presentable to people that don't understand art.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that episode. Again, thanks to Bobby for taking time out to talk. I think this was such a great episode. Check out the show notes at allanmckay.com/130. And if you get a chance, please share this episode around. I think that all of us can benefit from it. I'm going to be posting the second episode to this later on, so I'll give you a heads up about that. They'll be a lot more focused on schoolism, and there's a lot of cool stuff that we get into, so really worth it. I'm actually doing another schoolism episode just for fun. It was just coincidentally, I ended up talking to one of the instructors, and obviously we've had a few on here. I think we've had Nathan Fowkes and Justin Goby Fields as well, or Justin Fields as well in the past, and that was always a lot of fun. But coincidentally, I'm also getting Thierry Lafontaine, who was a sommelier, so in other words, a wine expert, and then decided to change careers. And he's actually one of the instructors that will do a kind of a mentorship, like a focused group, where I think for 30 days, you'll actually move into Thierry's big house in, I think it's North Quebec, and learn and teach every single day. It's really amazing. I love the idea of it, just doing something that fully immersive. So that's going to be up next episode. And then I've got some really great ones with some really amazing artists. So I'm excited. Ryan Connolly from Film Riot, a couple other really cool people. It's going to be awesome. So I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, show notes, allanmckay.com/130, and I'll post Bobby's second part of this episode on schoolism down the line as well. That is it for now. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this. Take a moment. Just go to the show notes, allanmckay.com/130, and you can share the episode there. Thanks again, and rock on.